We have a really exciting guest here with us today with some amazing experience in the marketing world. He's worked in a number of different marketing and advertising agencies early on in his career. Eventually went to Best Buy, where he held various director roles in marketing. And not long after going to Best Buy, he became the chief marketing officer there, where he was part of a team that kind of reinvented Best Buy's mobile phone business. He created, high growth, high profit, low turnover customer satisfaction engine, which was responsible for, marketing end to end as the business grew, from a 9-store test to an omni-channel retail platform with over 1,400 locations and a full e-commerce capability. And it grew the market share for Best Buy 7x during that period. He then became the senior VP of marketing, responsible for a $1 billion budget across paid, owned, earned, and substantial partner media investments. Brands that you guys know very well, and I'm sure you guys have heard of, including Best Buy, Geek Squad, Magnolia, Pacific Sales, and private label brands, as well as, co-marketing for key partners such as Microsoft, Samsung, Apple, and others. He then held shorter term roles with marketing companies before becoming the CMO for Wynn Resorts, where he led a consumer and brand marketing for the world's premier integrated resort and casino. During a complicated turnaround, he's diagnosed, developed, and successfully delivered programs to reinvigorate the brand in Las Vegas and launch a $2.5 billion Encore Boston Harbor strategy, and align the global and brand strategies and really lay the foundation for to transform the consumer marketing capabilities for Wynn Resorts. So without further introduction, I'd like to introduce you guys to our guest today, Mr. Scott Moore. Scott, thanks for joining us on the show today, and we're super excited to chat with you.
You bet. That's quite an intro. I need to hire you as my publicist. That was very, very impressive. Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, we're sure excited to have you today and really talk through all the great experience that Hunter laid out there to begin with. So to start off, I know the role of a marketer has changed so much over the years. So as you were at Best Buy, now you're at Wynn Resorts. With more channels, greater customer expectations, and increased advertising costs, how have you used a combination of technology, people, and processes to combat these challenges within your organization to propel them forward like you obviously have?
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for having me. And I think that's a well-phrased question. I think when most of us, or at least many of you, are sort of in the first throes and you've kind of grown up as a digital native in marketing, not just in your life, but like everything you think of starts digitally. For many us in the older crowd, there were no full stack marketers when I started. Like, we were making TV ads and making print ads and stuff. And so the world's changed. In order to be a leader at that level, you have to have experience across all aspects. You can't just be a digital specialist. You can't be just a brand person. You can't be just a marketing technology person. You need to have skills and experiences and instinct developed across all spheres. And it's just a different set of spheres. I think your question or your observation about how it is a function of people, process, and technology is the truth. I think that's what makes it so hard, but it makes the potential for impact so much bigger. I often talk about when we redesigned Best Buy's loyalty program. So it shifted from, it was actually a fantastic program called Reward Zone. It was sort of heralded as a leading edge loyalty program. We turned it into My Best Buy. I think if we had done that in 2010, you just called up your CRM person and say, hey, we'd like it to be better. Could you go fix this? And the CRM team would run off, right? That's not how the world works anymore. If you want to create epic change, big change, think of the people who have to sit at that table in order to get that work done. And this is marketing technology discussion. Like, Martech sits at the heart of it all. And you need a specialist. Bill Warple was the guy that we worked with at Best Buy, who's phenomenal, who sees every single piece of marketing technology. But he had to understand what were the technical capabilities from an IT perspective, what were the things we were trying to do, what did need to be done inside and out. And so I think you can imagine this kind of knights of the round table. The process inside is you can't hand it off to one capability. It has to be designed with everyone in mind. Technology is a blend of seeing what do you have a CDP? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. back in the old days, you had to build something. Now you got to figure out with whom you're going to partner based on your existing infrastructure. So there's technology. But I think the biggest thing is you look at that sort of knights in the round table example. It's really important that leaders are clear on what they're trying to get done, that they have the support of their peers and above. And you frame the challenge in a big enough way. Like if I walked into a CEO's office and said, I'm going to give you $1 million worth of value, million. Most CEOs wouldn't even look up. Like $1 million is not super interesting. However, most people, if you say, look, in the first 6 months, 12 months, I'm going to have $10 million of value, and we're on the path to 100 million, even the biggest CEOs in the world pay attention to those kinds of numbers. So the leader's job is frame a problem that's at scale, that's a consequence, that sort of rallies the teams to it, that you have the right seats sort of around the round table. And then I think your process, that's a function of the people and the capabilities. And then collectively, you need a process that's going to set out the vision. This is somewhat contemporary, somewhat true over time. Like, okay, are we hearing from the right people? How are we testing the right thoughts? Those kinds of things. So I think that was a long-winded way of saying, I think it is a function of people, process, and technology. And that's what makes it both exciting and kind of a nightmare.
Yeah, no, definitely true. And I think I really liked how you talked about how important it was to be a full stack marketer and, really taking that up another level in terms of, kind of marketing seat at that Knights of the Round Table within the corporate structure. There was a recent survey by Accenture that showed many organizations, about 90%, view marketing as kind of the connective tissue between different lines of business, whether that's your sales team if you're in B2B, whether that's your IT team to bring the technology in, maybe your service team, maybe your product team, based on the ownership of customer data and insights, which is at the core of everything we do. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you use technology and data to really facilitate growth at the different companies that you've been leading?
Sure, absolutely. I think, thanks to our friends at Amazon, we are all being forced to become incredibly customer centric. I think it's ironic given that the heaviest Martech lift I did was during the Best Buy years. But Amazon has changed it all. Whether you're selling a wind turbine or a Nike shoes, like people expect it to come with that one-click convenience, right? It's just, you don't have two different lives. Oh, my B2B work life and then my consumer living life. They've kind of merged. And I think against that backdrop, in Best Buy at the time it's always been, the notion of customer centricity was the thought that Brad Anderson sort of was advocating for as early as 2002, like really aggressively being customer centric. But what's interesting is to try to make a physical experience completely tailored is very expensive, very difficult. To make a digital experience tailored, intuitive, data infused is it's still a heavy lift, but it's a hell of a lot easier than building a whole new store or product or whatever. So to the question, I think marketers, because of who we are and how we think, regardless of whether you came up as an advertising person or from P&G, it doesn't matter. You inherently wake up worried about the customer. And I think remains the fundamental competitive advantage a marketer has in the corporate structure is this incredible customer obsession. I think it foots to my view, like, what is marketing? Marketing hasn't changed over time at all. What we're doing today is the same thing they were doing when they rolled out the first pair of Levi's. Like, who's our customer? What are their needs? How am I meeting them? Who's my competition? Are we better than them? What's our source of differentiation? Are we getting better? Like, these are the questions marketers always ask. How we deliver those things has changed radically from whatever it was, 1880 to 1980 to today. When I think about the role data plays, I think marketers have always been focused on customer data, customer insights. It's just that data was crap back in the day, 30 years ago back in the day. Now you've got so many new tools. And so the examples I would give to your question are, one, I think a marketer is likely to have the intellect to be able to not get overwhelmed by the data, to require that it needs to be there, but not be able to have the dexterity to move across platforms and across data sources. So some of the best work I've ever done started with, and you can start anywhere. That's where I think people forget. Sometimes the biggest insights come from a qualitative observation on a bus. Like, great things happen there. You should not bet the future of the company on a qualitative observation on a bus, but that is a piece of data. On the flip side, you can set up a conjoint or your traditional market research, those sort of things. Those also can provide great insights, but they're not enough. The great marketers are using data from all sources. So they're, we've done things like creating a demand landscape, understanding where, using quantitative measures to figure out where a category is going or where the customer's going, backing it up with behavioral analytics. So another good example from, you had mentioned my cell phone days. We knew from quantitative external data that market cell phone penetration was 35%. So only 35% of Americans had a cell phone. I had my fourth BlackBerry because I was, a business person, but like my cousins didn't. They're still buying their first flip phone. If you looked at Best Buy sales data online, you just said no one buys phones in America because we just didn't sell many cell phones online. And so you have to kind of toggle between, okay, wait a minute. Market penetration suggests it's growing. Consumers are dissatisfied with their experience. Let's look to our data. Our data was not very good at that point, and we were able to do, say, that's not right. Let's look at other aspects of the consumer data that we saw. We could see what people were buying from a sales perspective, how they clicked, where they clicked, the notion that as a smartphone emerged, basically half of our categories would collapse into this one product. Like the need for digital video recorders went down dramatically on the smartphone. And so if you think about it from a process perspective, I would just encourage everyone to be looking at as many different points of data, whether they all fit seamlessly in an AI-powered tool or not. Like, you have a brain, the brain still remains the best computer we have. And so you got to think about, okay, quantitatively, what's this pointing? How's that being validated by behavioral analytics and stuff only you can see? Ideally, you're integrating third-party and even second-party data to look at that. And then don't forget that as you go to market, the qualitative insights, both from your customers and from your employees, can really shape the way you launch, whatever initiative you're launching. And so that's how I see data at scale. And I think, we've learned a lot about how to bring data together and make it more accessible. And there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, so it's definitely so true with how important data is and the day in, day out for marketers. So I really like how you talked about, that qualitative and then quantitative observation. I think in some ways, like you said, there's more data available than ever today. One thing that I read recently that somewhat surprised me, but not, given that we work with marketers a lot, was that in a survey of CMOs last year, 40% said that they only 40% of the time they rely on data to make decisions. And I started to think about, like, how is that possible with, like you said, being able to track down to the click, but, is it a sheer circumstance that there's just so much data and things are so siloed that they're unable to get it together? So going on down that train of thought, with so much data available today, what recommendations did you have for marketers and business that want to incorporate that data into campaign results and into their decision-making process to make more accurate decisions to drive the bottom line?
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I think this is one of those topics that will remain for a long time, 30 years, sort of when we're all retired, hopefully sitting on your boat. We'll be talking about how the changes, but the problem will not be solved because you can't know enough. And in the end, it's going to come down to judgment call. Like, in the end, the reason you're paying the people, whether you're a 25-year-old CEO or at 65, those people are being paid for their judgment. And again, the human brain remains the best processor we have, despite what, whether we can beat the Go game in AI or not. Like, the brain really matters and perspective really matters. So I think in a bad case, I think everyone just tries their best to make good decisions. And I do believe that. Some people are more informed, have better judgment, but I think everyone's generally trying their best. In a bad case scenario, you're just synthesizing what this brain can happen to think at this exact moment based on what this one brain has processed, regardless of the data sources. And I think increasing that's a bad solution. It's bad if we turn it over to a committee to see like, one of my biggest pet peeves is you do a human-centered design exercise and everyone puts their ideas up and everyone votes. I think that's helpful in the vote. I'm not sure if you've done these, but when you put your stickers on the thing, that doesn't mean that idea number 7 wins. That just says, for the people in this room, idea number 7 had the most love. At some point, an executive has to be like, yeah, but what the room doesn't know is we can't afford to do 7. But it's a signal that I need to capture and pay attention to and fold that in to the decision-making process. So the bad case scenario is one brain, no matter how big, making a decision all alone with not a lot of input. The other thing goes back to, on the other side, a good scenario is when you're bringing lots of new data lots of insights from that data. Too much data just gets locked up and unused. But are we trying to sort of unearth an insight that becomes actionable? And that's a great scenario. We're able to do that. The thing is, we probably have more people than we have process or technology to make that happen. The processes that have been built over the past 25 years are lean towards the other. It's like, well, let's get the big facts in front of the decision maker and have them decide, and let's keep going. The processes aren't, now we have, if you think about how hard it was to get an A/B test of an email not that long ago, it was a process problem. It wasn't a technology problem. It was like, okay, when I make the email, was it A/B tested? Was it scaled? Did it go out? Now that's just assumed, built in. It was a process change more than a technological evolution. So I would say, like, some of the best, I advise a company called Lucy, which does AI for marketers. And so what they're trying to do on the good side is, I'm sure you can imagine a scenario where your boss comes in and says, what is happening in New York City? And so if you're a good leader, you're like, I am on it. And then you shut the door and you're like, what is going on in New York City? Like, you don't know what's going on in New York City. Like, our sales up, down, how much did we spend? Like, your brain just can't process that much. I mean, unless it's the only thing you do, but if you're a leader, you kind of probably have one or two things. And so what I think in the old world, that would set off, like, leader walks out, is like, I have no idea what's going on in New York, and sets off this like little like panic circles. You call the agency, what do we do in New York? You call the media person, what do you do in New York? You call the website, you're like, why did sales crash? Whatever. It creates a lot of activity. With Lucy, this is an AI powered tool. I still have to call someone because I'm probably late for a meeting. But I'd call you and say, hey, what happened in New York? And you'd set up a search box. You'd open up a search box that looks at all the stuff that we know was going on in New York from our secondary and third party data, but also has scanned every single document we've ever made. We'll be able to pull up Q2 investments, whatever. And the first 10 questions are answered within about 4 minutes by a relatively smart marketer. Okay, so that's a pretty cool tool. And everyone's like, yeah, that's great. However, you have to make a technological investment in it. You have to integrate it into your systems. And you have to think about your behavior change. Like, how am I going to train marketers to not reflexively call whoever they would, it's your lifeline from that TV show. Don't do that. Calmly take a breath, open up the file, and start to type in and realize, oh, we cut our spending by 30% in New York City last month. And competitor A doubled their spending. There was a flood in the battery, like whatever happened. That is an example of how companies are starting to adjust the technology, the people, and the process to go after better decisions. But again, back to our Knights of the Round Table example, doesn't happen if I don't have my director of marketing technology, because he had to go find that Lucy thing. Doesn't happen if I don't have a good marketer who's like sitting at central control trying to figure this out. Doesn't work without a right challenge. Doesn't work without all the core marketing things. But those are some examples.
Or someone to integrate the technology into your, company in an effective way that, you can actually use it to its fullest capability.
Yeah. I mean, someone asked me to give a speech in Portugal, which, by the way, if anyone wants me to give a speech in Portugal, the answer is yes. Like, of course. The guy called me. I'm like, yeah, about what? I'll talk about anything. But it was interesting. At this conference over there, really interesting set of people, really interesting set of speakers. And I think it was a follow-up question or something. I basically told them the number one thing you need to do as a marketing leader is hire your director of marketing technology, because it is a very precise but critical role that's relatively new. Like, we've had people who made ads for a long time. We've had people who are doing incredible media math and metrics and all that. But marketing technology it's evolved so much, and you need someone who is technical enough to understand exactly how the company's stack is built, its stack, to understand what marketing is and does and how it might get used. And then also has the ability to look outside and understand, okay, Salesforce just acquired whomever. Does that impact us? Does it not? Do we care? Do I need to get Salesforce on the line? And it's not a small job. And I think it started that way. And I think some folks were like, oh yeah, well, just bring in so-and-so. And, I'm sure they can sort it out. And so my number one recommendation to that global audience was know this, find these people, bring them onto your teams, because they're actually going to increase the velocity of you as a leader, of your team, of everybody, because, if you pay attention to the right stuff, maybe Lucy is right for you. I don't know. But you'd want someone who knows your world, whether your team can handle it, and whether it's going to integrate quickly or say, hold on, this is going to take me a year. This is not going to work for us. And so that's what I think.
Well, that's definitely music to our ears to hear somebody do a call out for marketing technology, which is obviously something we're very passionate about here. I know earlier on you mentioned about CDPs and kind of how the technology's changed over time, where it used to be, you kind of built everything and then, figuring the right technology stack to bring into. Have you had some experience with, taking what your internal technology teams had built and then being able to, bring in a third party, whether it's SaaS tool or something like that, to be able to really sit at the center and have that centralized customer vision? Can you talk a little bit about like how you go through that decision-making process with the Knights of the Round Table to be able to ultimately understand, like, how do I get everything together so I can action upon it in a certain way?
Sure. I mean, I think this is true at Wynn. It's true across my peer set. And what's interesting is everyone's at a different state of their journey. I don't have a King Arthur analogy, but everyone's in a different country fighting a different dragon. Or I guess we're all fighting dragons. So I mean, I think the first thing is to relax and understand, hey, like this is potential. What people are asking you to do can't be done in a minute. And so there's a lot of leadership work to make sure that at the top of the organization, they have a sense for what can be done and why it matters. And why it matters, I think, to the people who hold the P&Ls and are responsible to Wall Street or whoever, that usually comes in the form of revenue. And so one of the other groups I work with called Tradecraft, I brought them in to Wynn. Tradecraft has they call it the Quick Start Analytics product, which basically, and I'll get into the technology aspects of it, but we always joke in analytics, like there's always that poor person who's really well-intentioned, usually a bit quieter, who's like sitting in the corner, big computer, big brain, 6 trillion requests and 75 trillion pieces of data. And they're just like, I just have so much empathy for them because there's just never enough time to do everything that they need to do. And the tools that they're working on commonly across all different industries, it doesn't matter what category we're talking to, healthcare, consumer products, B2B, like this person exists and they're valued. They just are not given enough resources or tools to do their job. What I did with the Tradecraft guys was basically, I didn't have time to basically make the case. Here's why I need X, and it's usually X $1 million to activate this. Like I know it because I've done it, but I've got a lot going on. So you can bring in a partner. It could be someone from the internal team or it could be someone from the outside. It really doesn't matter. But the first sort of 6 weeks need to be not about signing a new deal with Salesforce. That's actually the wrong answer. Nothing against Salesforce. I think they're great. The first 6 weeks need to be going in and taking a fresh look at what data do you have and what are you doing with it? Because most enterprises at this point have collected a ton of data and have a ton of existing relationships, and they are not they're not being activated properly. And so I am before you start saying I need my own CDP and I need a new CRM solution and I need this and my data lake and all that, the first thing is like, wait, what are we doing? What do we have? And how can we get the first thing working better? Because what's going to happen is the company is going to start to build muscle around the first things you're talking about. Like, oh, we actually have some data. Well, we don't have what we want, but what if we looked at Medallia, which is where at Wynn, where the guest data, like you can see insights from that pool, which was not, it didn't report to me, but I don't care where the data comes from. I'm agnostic. I'm like, where's an insight? So you deploy a small team to go after existing data pools, existing contracts, and say, can we get more from the same? So the first question. And in many cases, you can get 5 million, 10 million worth of incremental revenue opportunity by slowing down, having a strategic perspective and say, wait a minute, what if we did this? What if we adjusted these time cycles? What if we adjusted anything? That builds the case when you go into your next executive team meeting and you say, hey, guess what? Like, remember the poor guy in the corner? He's actually super smart. We paired him with this person and they went out and found $5 million. And again, back to the CEO question, like, I'm not sure if Jeff Bezos cares about $5 million, but most people, you're like, hey, and we found the incremental $5 million. That's helpful. That gets attention. And it begs the question among the leaders, like, wait a minute, if there's $5 million in 5 weeks, that was That's interesting. Like, what else is there? And you start to build the case for more comprehensive solutions, because ultimately you want to get to, I mean, I'm talking about large orders of magnitude here, but you want to start to talk about big numbers and say, hey, look, if we find 100 million, hopefully, I'm going to need 10 of it. So you keep your 90 that we return. I'm going to need 10 to build the capabilities I need. And so this is from a more of a methodology perspective, how I think it can really work. And then you get into your original question, which was like, when we have this epiphany at the top, at some point, usually a C-level person besides marketing has an epiphany that says customer centricity is central to our strategy, period, full stop. It must become the source of competitive differentiation. I mean, that's the Amazon. If you look at Amazon, obviously I'm a big fan of what they do. That's the thought. Read the first little page that he wrote when he went public. It's like, we will be obsessed and deliver more for our customers, and they will guide us where we need to go. And that has led them into this incredible organization globally. So I think that's key. And then you start to figure out more substantially, like we had to spend 30 million bucks on this thing called Athena to get the data together, because a lot of the technologies just weren't there. You couldn't just do it from a SaaS perspective. We had to build a bunch. It's moved along. But it's the same thing. Do you have access to the data? Is it clean? How is it impacting your segmentation schemes? Are you getting rich, robust lenses on that? Okay, let's assume you got a good data scheme. Do you have the pipes into the consumer's homes, whether it's digital or CRM or whatever? Do you have a content engine that's tailoring constantly? And I'd say the last thing that's really important from a consumer marketing perspective, which you're hearing more and more about, is it's really all about signal capture, which is like, Best Buy is just easy to talk about because everyone's been in a Best Buy. There was a day where if I was trying to get you guys to buy a flat panel TV, like the recipe was 13 TV ads plus 2 newspaper inserts plus 2 trips to store equals sale at 50% close rate. Like, it was just, I mean, it wasn't this simple, but it was pretty close. Nowadays, like, especially with COVID, like that's not even close. The ways that they touch a customer are incredible, in the sense that they look at, where did they click? What did they click on? At what rate? Did they open the emails we sent? Do they respond to the loyalty program? Did they see like all the stuff every marketer is thinking about? But the formula still exists. But the marketers have to be watching, what are the macro signals that are being sent? And then also down to a customer level, literally down to like, does Scott more open his emails in the morning or night? And when am I more receptive? Like in the morning, I actually don't read a lot of emails from, a Best Buy or a Target or whatever, or Nike. In the evening, I actually probably will, because I'm clicking through and just trying to delete stuff. And so I think more sophisticated marketers are looking at all of this stuff and building customer level models to say, hey, you want to try and sell more a flat panel TV, hit them on a Thursday, usually 10 p.m. And the reason we suspect this is because we know he bought one 4 years ago, and the technology's evolved, and like whatever, he has a $5 cert that he'll probably spend, and da 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 da. So that was a little bit winding road, but that's what I think.
No, it was great to understand the importance of data and the importance of the customer's perspective, and really being able to track kind of where people are at on their buying journey, and being able to send the right content at the right time. So
Sure.
I know we just have a couple more minutes here, so I just wanted to ask you, one quick question, and then we'll kind of get out here. But as you're talking about the importance of data and clicks and everything like that, that's great from a company perspective. But obviously, from a consumer perspective, sometimes people are fairly guarded about what they want companies to know and be able to share about them. And I think you've seen some of that in the shift in privacy laws over recent years, whether it's GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California, as well as some other things that we've seen there. How have these changes impacted marketers to this date? And then as they continue to change, where do you see that maybe changing and making more complexity for marketers? And how do we as marketers stay ahead of these changes with preferences and consumer laws?
Yeah. Well, I wish I knew the actual answer to that, because I would immediately set up a company with you guys and we'd become fabulously wealthy right away. Like, there's no doubt this is, it's one of the key forces and factors that are shaping our business. And I think, like any major structural change, like, it's going to take time for us to sort it out. I'd say one of the themes I see, one of the rules is the old golden rule, do unto others sort of thing, which is, I think there are There are companies like I remember, like you have to think about who do you want to be talking to you as a customer. That's really the question. That puts the onus on the brand and the business to earn the right to communicate with them. And I think that's fundamental, because I will always talk to people and to brands that are connected with me. And I know that's not a Martech kind of answer, but I think that is actually the truth. There's certain brands that make me feel good. And I'm not just talking about because I see TV ads and Super Bowl. Like, I just feel good because I'm, associated with them. Like the lobster in the back picture there. Like, I don't know what it's from, but like I was like, oh, that reminds me. Like it had an emotional connection. And I guess it made all up to my wall. So I just want to land. It's not just because they're big brands, but the emotional connection and the desire from the consumer. I think with that, what we'll start to see is more brands looking to how are they monetizing that love, monetizing their audience in a way that's not gross. Meaning, so the lobster is a bad example. Let's just say the car brand I like is Audi. How are they going to know that I bought one and that over the next 5 years they think I should buy another? And how are they going to earn the right for me to like pay attention to them and maybe join some membership clubs? Because once I join something, the cost, the return on ad spend plummets. Like once I'm inside your CRM, it's 100x cost. It's so much cheaper to send me an email and invite me to an event than try and find me again. And so I think you're going to see a much more of a shift towards owned media and earned media over paid media. It doesn't mean paid media will go away, but the way we use it will, I think, shift dramatically over time. And the onus will always be on the brand to make sure you're connecting in an authentic way and not being a jerk. And like, I've sent bad emails, not bad, but like I've over communicated with people. Like, I didn't mean to, but I definitely have done it. That is going to start pushing back on me, because if I want to keep you involved, I'm going to have to engage you in a different kind of way than just, tell you a TV ad or pound you on your favorite websites wherever you visit online or hammer your inbox. I'm going to have to find ways, and that content is going to get richer and more relevant and more engaging. And, I remember with Wynn, we had a great partnership with the New England Patriots. And I think 10, 15 years from now, this is kind of a dated analogy since Brady just won his next Super Bowl down in Tampa. But like, I can imagine, it doesn't have to be Wynn, it could be anybody. I can imagine Seagrams or I don't know who, but like wanting not to just do a deal to get at the entire NFL or just the Patriots, but like buy and start to build relationships with fans of the quarterbacks of the AFC East. And because like people care at that, football is a good simple analogy, but people care at that level. And like the difference between a consumer who's a fan for the quarterbacks versus the defensive backs, like those are kind of like, what jersey did you buy? You're one kind of person, you got the quarterback jersey on your back, another if you got the lineman, And so I think in time you're going to find audiences being built at much more micro levels. Like you're seeing a little bit on Clubhouse right now. No one knows what Clubhouse is or does for the moment, but like these micro communities are kind of coming together. And I think in time you'll see they're very intimate on Clubhouse. I think you're going to see that. And I think that's probably the biggest shift. And it'll be triggered a bit from this privacy thing, which is like, okay, well, we're not going to be able to behave the way we did 5 years ago. And so it's going to push us deeper into owned media and then up into more awareness generating, because in the end, you still need to make people aware of what your product is. You got to get them to consider it. You got to get them to try it. And then ultimately you want them to become loyal customers. So that's the same, to wrap this all up. That hasn't changed since the first person thought of the purchase funnel. True. We need to do those things every day, all day long. Now, how we do it, whether we can have access to cookies or not have access to cookies, it's just the challenge of our generation.
Definitely well said. So we really appreciate all the great time and insight today, Scott. Definitely exciting to hear from a business leader like yourself and what you guys are doing to be successful. Is there any way that if you'd like to give people to reach out to you if they have questions or would like to learn more about some of the things that you're involved in that you'd like to share?
Sure. Yeah, you could hit me up on LinkedIn or yeah, my personal email is scottbmoore, MOORE @gmail.com. So yeah, I'll do my
Great.
best to respond. Yeah, I'm not saying I'll respond in 5 seconds, but I mean, I usually try to follow up. Anyone who's interested, I'm always, I think one of the great things, you learn, we never know exactly what we're getting into. We always learn on the job. And then as you learn something, it's really important you share it. Because, I mean, I love that, I think it's Isaac Newton quote, like, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants. And like, I got here because I picked up some insights from people who are ahead of me, or oftentimes younger than me, but just were smarter than me about something. So yeah, so shoot an email and I'll try to get back real quick. And, but yeah, no, thanks again for doing this. I think the area that you guys are pressing into, it's a relatively new need, but it's not a need that's going to go away, because we just think about it. It's one of the best things about Wynn Resorts, working with these customers whose expectations are just so high. Like, it just pushes you. I love being in categories where the customer expectations are so high, you're chasing that. It's the pressure of exceeding the customer's expectations that pushes you. And I think marketing technology is going to be that way. Like, we can never, unless you can read my mind. Like, when you can do that, read my mind, it's time for another cup of coffee and have Duncan run one in. Like, that will be brilliant. A total marketing technology win. Till we have that, I think it's, folks in this industry are going to have jobs for a long time, because not everything's clean and we have to deal with legacy technologies and all that. But that's that. But there's a bunch of people who are really good at that, and I always value them.
Well, that's great, Scott. We, again, really appreciate it. You delivered some fantastic insights there that I think people are going to, take just massive amounts of value away from it. If you guys want to learn more about Xeris, you can go to Xeris.com or visit us on LinkedIn as well at Xeris. We look forward to chatting with you guys again at the next podcast. Thanks, guys.